Hi there. Hello. Got a phone thing. Whatever. Okay. Lesson 10 is going to be adding or subtracting real numbers. When I see real numbers, I got to put a number line on the board. Ha! Just have to. Well, we've done adding real numbers and we've done subtracting real numbers. And now we're going to be saying, what if all these things get thrown into a list of things all together? I want to talk to you a little bit about mental math. All right. And typically in mental math, you want to do as many things from left to right as possible, just like you do when you're when you're reading. Sorry, I'm having a hard time thinking. And so, because of the properties of addition and subtraction, um, they're commutative and they're associative, which means you can move them around and you can do them in pieces however you so desire, without changing your answers and the values and all that kind of stuff. Let me give you a quick example of that. If you're given a problem, 3 plus 7 minus 4 plus 1 minus 6. It's kind of hard to see that 6 there, but minus 6. You could sit there and go, well, okay, I'm going 3, and then go up to 7 is 10, and then go minus 4 is 6, and then plus 1 is 7, and then minus 6 is 1. You can do that, but if there's fractions and stuff, then it's a little harder to keep track of these things. So one suggestion that the book makes, which I think is good, is to begin by writing the problem as addition only. That is, instead of looking at that minus sign, those minus signs, think of them as negative. Okay, that's one way we can do it. I'm going to do this in two different ways. So one way to be that, go 3 and 7 and negative 4 and 1 and negative 6. So I'm using the parentheses there as symbols of inclusion to group together the negatives now instead of talking about subtraction. Remember I said subtraction is just kind of, in some contexts, doesn't really, it's not really necessary. So let's look at this in terms of addition. The next thing is then we want to group the positives together and the negative things together. And that will help simplify the problem a little bit as well. I'm going to put all the positive things together, the 3 and the 7 and the 1. And then I'm going to group the negatives together, the negative 4 and the negative 6. And I kind of collect up the positives and collect up the negatives before I do my final combination. So 3, 7, and 1 makes 11, and negative 4 and negative 6 is negative 10. Okay, see that? It's easy to add the 4 and the 6, and then they're both negative. And it's easy to add up the positive numbers. And now I'm left with 11, negative 10. You can think of that on the number line. Go 11 this way, in the positive direction. We go back 10 this way, and we end up at 1. We end up at 1. Mentally, we go back to mental math. You can start picking those things out and combining them right away without doing a whole bunch of the written stuff. When I see this problem, I think I've got positives and I've got negatives. So right away, I'm gathering up things, especially things that are equal to 10. It's nice to, they call that composing them or combining them. I can see right here I'm going to have these two that make negative 10. Negative 4 and negative 6 make negative 10. I'm going to put them together in one pocket right there. I'm going to put all the other stuff, 3, 7, and 1. That's 10 and 1. You see here that I got 10 minus 10, 0. And I got a 1 left over there. So right away I'm like, well, there's negative 10, there's positive 10. Those cancel each other out. And all I'm left with is this plus 1 business. That's where I see things. I'm looking for 10s. I'm looking for grouping positives and grouping negatives, and then proceeding from there. They're going to throw in some fractions. They're going to throw in some decimals. Those are all real numbers, though. So the things, the little ways that they go about it are all the same, okay? And having a number line out there might be helpful, especially if you get a mix of decimals, whole numbers, and fractions, positive things, negative things, and you're trying to see which one's bigger than the other one. They're going to have some problems like that. So let me switch up the board. We'll cover those two issues, and then we'll be done for this lesson. Okay, let's demonstrate this principle. We want to group things that are positive and negative together. And instead of thinking of things of subtraction, we want to think of them as adding the negative. Okay? So I got one with fractions and I've got one with decimals here. So let's look at this fraction one here. Luckily, everything is a ninth. Okay, so really we're counting up what's going on in the numerators here. But I do have a subtraction and I have 3 additions. So they suggested treat everything as if it's addition. That means I'm going to bracket this negative in there and I'm going to include now a plus sign in there. So now it's plus negative 5/9. And then number 2 was put all the positives together and we'll put all the negatives together. So we'll take our 4/9 and our 2/9 and our 7/9, and then we'll have the negative sitting over here by itself. Okay? And so we're looking at how many ninths? We got 4, 5, 6. We have 13 ninths all together over here. And then we've got our negative 5/9. 13 ninths and negative 5/9. This is subtraction. 13 minus 5 is 7, 8. 8 ninths. 8 ninths. Yeah, 8 ninths. Okay, that's how you do that without cheating and using your calculator and typing something wrong. You get the wrong answer. I think it's even more important, especially it's nice when they're all ninths. Okay, that's not such a hard problem. But with the decimals, that does get a little clunky. So I think it is important to combine positives and the negatives first because you're gonna get confused with adding and subtracting and carrying and borrowing and all that kind of business. So let's rearrange these, okay? I'm not gonna say plus the minus. I'm just gonna move these around so that I have 16.21 and 12.72. And then when we're done with that, then we'll take away that 21.54. Might even decide to do this and say that's one problem. Once I get this sum, then I'll do that product. So I'm going to do this from left to right. I think I can do that on this problem. I've got 10 and 10 makes 20. 6 and 2 makes 8. 2 tenths and 7 tenths is 9 tenths. And the 100th and the 200th makes 300. So there's that bit. And we can pretty much go from there with the math. We've got 28 minus 21, and that makes 7. And I got 93 minus 54. That's not too terribly hard of a problem. If you wanted to do that in a column, you could do that. We got 93 minus 50. This is the way I would do this, to break it up into smaller pieces. 93 minus 50 is 43, and then 43 minus 4 is 39. Not that you'd have to do it all in your head, but to me it does simplify things if I can break even just a 2 decimal place problem into pieces. Then I could probably get the right. I can verify that with my calculator, but I would definitely try something like that. Now, I did mention the number line business, so let me clear the board one more time, and we'll look at comparing numbers and where they would fit on the number line to see which ones are bigger or smaller than the others. Okay, I officially have a number wiggle there rather than a number line. And so one of the problems, Mr. Gravity, gives these 4 values. And they want you to put them in order from the least to the greatest. Now, least here means furthest to the left on the number line, and greatest means furthest to the right. A lot of times students will see least and greatest, and they'll say, well, 2 is definitely bigger than 7/8, so they'll put them in that order. But we've got to remember that we're talking about furthest to the left and furthest to the right on the number line. We're talking about least and greatest. The negative has to be the first one, because none of the other ones are negative, right? So -2 is going to have to go first. And it's a good idea to place these things on the number line and just see where they would end up. So here's -2 and -1 and 1 and 2. Now, this being the real number line, there are all kinds of things in between 0 and 1, and between 1 and 2. So all the fractions, all the decimals, they fit inside of there. They're all real numbers as well. So I'm going to put that -2 on the list. Maybe even just draw a line there, say I've taken care of that one. Then we got these 3 right here. And the tricky thing about these is that this one's a whole number, and then this one's a decimal, and then these 2 are fractions, and then they're fractions in different ways. This has a different denominator than that one does. So one way to compare these things well, if you don't have a very good number sense, is to put them all in the same format. Is to either make them all decimals or make them all fractions, whichever is going to be easiest. Now I know what this is as a fraction, but maybe you don't, so maybe it'd be easier for you to see all of these in terms of decimals. That makes them a lot easier to compare. So we would leave this one here, but we can turn 1/2 into 0.5. And you take your calculator, you can have it do 7/8 for you, and that is 0.875. Oops, 0.875. Dyslexic day. Okay, so now I'm comparing these, and I'm looking at that, and this is a 0.5, that's a 0.1, this is a 0.8. Then it gets a lot easier to decide where those things go. 1/2 fits right here. 0.125 is pretty small, that fits right here. And 0.875 is almost to 1, so it fits right there. So our order would be -2, 1.25, 1/2, and 7/8 from least to greatest. Okay, that's mentally I'm always just trying to convert them all to look the same, and then I can compare them. Especially when some sit there and you go, is 3/8 bigger or smaller than 1/3? Like when you're going to get tools, you're like 7/16, 3/8. I don't know, that's too hard. Put them all into decimals, compare them that way, and then off you go. There's another problem in your book about comparing. So again, they're just going to have you do the problem on the left side and the right side and put in the circle either equals, greater than, or less than. I think you can handle that on your own. And an application question with Carly, investing into 2 accounts. And so again, you're going to add and subtract real numbers. It's easiest to clump the additions and clump the subtractions, or the negatives and the positives together before you finish it off. Mentally, it's easier to do it that way if you're dealing with things that are like each other than things that are not like each other. Keep that in mind. Ask some questions in class if you have any. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.